Hi there, it's Kate. Welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you're here. I am here today to do a wrap-up of what I read this week. You'll notice that I did a lot of reading to try to help me stop thinking, as opposed to often I do reading to try to help me start thinking about things. So that's the way this week went for me, in case you were wondering. So I will start with the one thinking book that I did read, and that was I finished, finally, Looking for Lorraine by Imani. And I know that I've talked about this book a lot because it took me a while to finish it, but I loved it. If you have questions about how intersectional feminism plays out in a woman's life, or how the civil rights movement intersects with or intersected with feminism, gender, sexuality, anti-colonialism, this book shows how all those things influence each other and interacted with each other, all those movements within one woman's life. And I think it was really, really well done. Not perfect. I had a few quibbles with the book, but overall a really incredible look at one individual. And I have a full review that I'm working on for my blog, and hopefully I'll do one on this channel as well. So I don't want to get too much into the nitty-gritty, but overall, really, really well done book. Then I read a couple books on my Kindle, and I say then, not that this isn't the right order at all, but just for the sake of this video, then I read a couple books on my Kindle. The first was a romance, and I'm looking at my Goodreads page because I don't have it with me. So I read The Sweethearts Knitting Club by Wilde. I did not love this book. It is about Flynn and Jessie's romance. They were together briefly in high school. Jessie was then wrongly accused or convicted and then sent to prison for 10 years. When he gets out, he goes back to find Flynn. I didn't love the way Flynn was portrayed. I was reading this to stop thinking, so I'm not working too hard to figure out why I didn't love this book. But I won't be continuing the series. It wasn't bad by any means, it just was not my favorite. Next, I read a cozy mystery, The Quick and the Thread by Amanda Lee, which centers around an embroidery shop, which was kind of fun and different. And I quite liked it. I think I will pick up the next in this series. Yeah, I mean, it's typical cozy mystery. There was a murder within the embroidery shop. There's a little love triangle, and a dog. There was a dog. That was probably my favorite part of the whole story. So I recommend that one. And then back to the physical books. So I read One Day in December by Josie Silver. And this book is getting all of the hype. I'm kind of glad that I picked it up. I read it before I knew about all of the hype, because I didn't love it as much as everyone else seems to be loving it. It's being billed as a holiday romance book, which I guess it is, but the whole thing takes place over like a decade. And so like the holidays are in there, but they're not necessarily a huge component of the book. It wasn't my particular favorite type of romance, in which I don't want to give too much away, but it was good. If you don't love really sappy romances, I think this would work, because it is not a super sappy romance. I think I like my romances a lot sappier. I like my happy endings to be done a little bit differently. So I recommend it, I guess, but it probably is not one that I would reread every holiday season, which is kind of my bar for holiday romances. It's not like, yeah, I don't want to. The reason that I didn't like it happens at the end, so I can't really say too much about it. Basically, I would say that awkward stage of a romance book lasts longer than I like. Let's put it that way. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. Oh, I didn't even say what it was about. The premise of the book is that Lori and, oh shoot, what's the guy's name? I want to say Kevin, Jack. It's Jack. Lori and Jack see each other through the window of a bus one Christmas. They fall in love, but just by the glance. And then she's looking for him afterwards because she's in love with him. And it turns out when she finds him, he is dating and in love with her roommate. And then it goes from there. So it was okay. Some people I think really like it. Wasn't my cup of tea. I also read and finished Winter Street by Elin Hilderbrand. I've never read any Elin Hilderbrand before. This was definitely a holiday story, a Christmas story. I guess you would maybe call it a romance. There are romances in the book. I struggled a little bit because it's told from the perspective of many different characters. So it's about a family who owns and runs an inn on Nantucket. So it's a father and his adult children. His ex-wife is in New York, and then his current wife in the first few pages leaves him for the man who plays Santa Claus at their inn's Christmas celebration. And so it's about kind of the fallout of that, but each of the adult children has their own very unique dramas that are playing out, and I think that was my favorite part of the book. A lot of romances seem like if there are many characters with struggles in the book, they're all going through the exact same struggle, just in a slightly different way. These were very, very different struggles, and I appreciated that. I will be going on to the next one, and I will say that if you plan to read this one, make sure you have at least the first two ready to go. This ends on a huge cliffhanger. Huge. I finished this late last night, and I was like, what happens? What happens? I had to know. So I guess that's a sign of a good book. Not the best holiday romance I've ever read, but pretty good. And I will continue on. And then finally, the last book that I finished this week, it's been a lot, and in a completely different vein, I picked up Reese Witherspoon's Whiskey in a Teacup. So this is like a memoir of her growing up in the South, and I enjoyed this much more than I thought I would. I kind of thought that I'd give it a try and really didn't expect to like it very much at all, but I really did. So it's about kind of Southern womanhood and what that looks like for her, including lots of recipes and kind of celebration ideas. It's like her hot roller technique is in there, all that kind of thing. It's self-deprecating. The humor is self-deprecating, but in a classy way. So, I don't know, it feels very on brand and consistent throughout the whole thing. My one criticism, it's hard to say it's a criticism because I wasn't expecting it in the book in the first place. In the beginning of the book, she talks about Southern women and the need for Southern women of all kind to push for equality. That it doesn't matter whether you're black or white, all are Southern women and all stand up for each other. That's paraphrasing, she says it better. And I was not expecting that. It was great. It was really exciting to see that laid out so unequivocally, but that only showed up in the beginning, in the introduction. And then as the book went on, she takes you through some things that she did with her grandmother when she was a child, or her grandfather when she was a child, but that theme never comes back of equality. You have themes of politeness and of presentation and of food and togetherness and all these different things, but we never get kind of the equal rights push that we saw in the beginning. And the thing that I would do that would make this book even better for me would be to push that theme all the way through. Because looking back on it, it almost seems like it was tacked on at the beginning as an afterthought, and then just it wasn't executed through the rest of the book. So kudos for putting it in there. Next time, let's see it go all the way through. Those were all the books that I finished, and it was a lot. Those were all very quick books to read. I did read, this book, let's see if I can, this is Night of Camp David by Fletcher Knebel, which is a novel from like 1968 that was re-released this week, and I was on the list for the library to get it. It's about what would happen if the president of the USA went stark raving mad, which seems very intriguing in this day and age. I like the premise. It's very prescient, but I could not get past the misogynistic writing of the 1960s and the weird sexual references to the protagonist's 13-year-old daughter. So I got like 50 pages in and just gave up on this one. If you can look past those things, I'm sure it would be an interesting thing to read, but it's not for me. And then finally, the last 2 books, I read some more on the origins of totalitarianism. I am about halfway through, maybe chapter 3 right now, which is great. I'm not going to talk too much about it. But then I also read some poems in this book. This is How Lovely the Ruins, Inspirational Poems and Words for Difficult Times. And I just kind of picked some poems at random. So this is a compilation of poems, all sorts of poems by all sorts of different writers that are inspirational, and it's divided up into sections such as, what are the sections called? How Lovely the Ruins, Against Tyranny, The Aching, The New Patriots, Gathering Strength, and To Summon Hope. So they're categorized thematically, and I just kind of read through some of the works at random, and I really enjoy it. So I think this will be a book that I pick up and down, at random through the next few months. I think if you like kind of inspirational words, this is another fun one. So that is what I read this week. Whew, it was a lot. I hope you had a good time reading this week as well. If you have read any of these and have any comments or anything at all, please leave it down below. And I hope you have a great week ahead, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.